New CNN analysis this morning. The crowd at the Trump rally noticed the gunman at least 1 minute and 57 seconds before the assassination attempt, almost 2 minutes. There are also new details on where the shooter was before he opened fire, as agents still work to determine why he opened fire on Donald Trump and the crowd. CNN's Danny Freeman is in Butler, Pennsylvania. You've been following this for us for some time. What can you tell us this morning?
Well, Sarah, I really want to highlight some of the work that our CNN digital video teams have done specifically when it comes to that timeline that you just addressed. Listen, we've seen it ourselves with a lot of videos that have been coming out since Saturday evening. We've also heard it from eyewitnesses, but our team synced up all of that witness video and detailed, as you said, that there was at least a minute and 57-second gap between when people in the crowd, and from different parts of the crowd, I should say, at that Trump rally realized that someone was on top of that roof, and then that distance between when he actually opened fire. So I encourage viewers to take a look at that online, because it really does paint a picture of not only how quickly this happened, but also how many people were noticing something was wrong before, of course, this tragedy struck. But Sarah, I want to detail also what you were talking about, that we are learning new information about some of the movements of the shooter prior to that ultimate shooting. We're talking, of course, about Thomas Matthew Crooks, the 20-year-old from Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. We now know that on Friday evening, he went to his sportsman club that he belonged to. He went to the rifle range there to practice. Then we also know on Saturday morning, he went to a Home Depot and he purchased a ladder. Then shortly thereafter, he went to a local gun store and purchased, as we understand it from law enforcement sources, 50 rounds of ammunition. He then drove to Butler, and once he was on site here at the rally, we do understand that local law enforcement did note him. They noted that he was acting suspicious around the metal detector area, but then, as far as we understand, he was not noticed again until he ultimately was perched on that roof and opened fire at former President Donald Trump. But again, Sarah, the big question that we still don't have an answer to right now is that question of motive. The FBI saying yesterday they still have not found a motive, and that's after interviewing witnesses, law enforcement agents, friends, family, and even being able to crack into his phone. Still no evidence that there was any strong ideological motivation that would have led him up to that roof on Saturday evening. Sarah?
Danny Freeman, those are extraordinary pictures and an extraordinary long amount of time for that gunman to have been sitting there with people noticing, except for the Secret Service. Thank you so much for your reporting there.
We are learning more about the shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks. In the 48 hours before he opened fire on Donald Trump, the 20-year-old apparently went to a shooting range where he was a member and practiced firing. The next morning, he purchased a ladder and 50 rounds of ammunition. What does all this tell you about what the shooter, what's behind the shooter, or what motive perhaps?
I think we're still unclear on the motive. I mean, the reports today about they've sort of tried to look in his phone, or they've looked in his phone. They don't. It's not giving them like that sort of eureka moment, right? This like, okay, this is exactly why he did it. We're hearing lots of information that is not neat in the sense that it conflicts with each other. You know, he gave money to a Democratic cause, but is his dad a big Trump supporter? And was he part of the GOP? I mean, none of these are going to fit a perfect narrative. What we do know from the information that you just described is, in a very short period of time, he seems to have sort of thought through, executed, operationalized, and then almost was successful in killing the former president. That's a very tight time frame. It wasn't like he was hoarding bullets for a long period of time. You're talking in the last couple of days. So investigators are going to look at what was happening, what was he saying, and might others have known.
And of course, there is never any guarantee that we will learn what the motive is behind the shooter. But would you expect, given what we know so far, that it's more likely that we would in the next few days or weeks?
I think what we will be able to determine is whether he was motivated by a single ideology or not. This is not your typical sort of lone wolf case. There's no manifesto. There's no sort of, people aren't saying, well, he was clearly this or he was clearly that. We're getting a better understanding of him, but it is not at all clear cut. It may be, like you said, that we never quite know what was going on in his head that would have tied whatever it was he was thinking to assassinating or trying to assassinate Donald Trump. And it may be only he knew, right? And that is the challenge right now. I think what's clear is he was not part of any large network that was planning to bring down the former president. He wasn't radicalized into a group. This was what we, a loner, someone who didn't have a community, someone who clearly didn't have support, who then used that status, used those characteristics to, for whatever reason, try to kill Donald Trump.
1 minute and 57 seconds. That's a long time. It is a long time. I mean, what are the questions you have about that length? What do we need to know as these investigations continue?
It is, John. Good morning to both of you. So there's a lot of questions. Why that perimeter was so small. I mean, I understand, having been involved in a bunch of these protection details, that the presidential detail is much larger than anybody else, vice president or first lady, and in this case, a former president. However, there's a team that goes in there to look at things beforehand, and those buildings had to be of major concern. One issue that keeps popping up is the fact that apparently there were police officers assigned to the interior of that building, and that complicates things. I'm sure that the sniper had that in his mind when he saw someone climb up on the roof. So there's that ambiguity in the mind of the person responsible for taking, cover, usually much farther out than 200 yards. Those snipers are looking out 1,000 yards with those scopes. So that close up is sort of a no man's land. Clearly there was confusion there. The other thing is that I can't understand why, with all the radio traffic that was going on of suspicious person, man on the roof, why they didn't just bundle the president up and take him off the stage, in that minute and 57 seconds. So all those questions have to be answered.
There are so many questions. And Phil, I do want to talk to you about the shooter himself. 100 interviews with family and friends. They looked for social media, not really a footprint. They went through his phone, not getting any indication of exactly why he did this. If you're looking into this, are you thinking that he's doing this on purpose? I mean, it's such an unusual thing for a 20-year-old not to have any social media footprint and not to have some sort of communication about what they may or may not have decided to do, isn't it?
This is definitely.
I don't think this is. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Phil.
I don't think this is purposeful. I think we're going to try to inject some rationality on someone who might have been acting rationally. Let me give you a different perspective on this, and especially the difference between an individual and a multiple person conspiracy. There's one obvious point. In a multiple person conspiracy, you're going to get communications among the conspirators that allow you not only to understand operational planning, but to understand what they're thinking and why. Obviously, this individual not only doesn't have co-conspirators, but clearly didn't have much of an online footprint. So then you go to the more interesting question. My experience of watching a lot of plots is that when you get into a multiple person conspiracy, that ideology starts to gel. The conspirators talk among themselves, and whether or not you agree with the ideology or whether it makes a ton of sense, you can at least understand it. When you have one individual who's not communicating with others, he's going to develop an ideology in his head that might be a hard right turn from anything that we would understand as rational. So I think one of the problems here is not just access to information, it's getting bits of information that don't make a lot of sense. And that might take some weeks to sort out here.